We're sitting in today here with Kenny Briscoe, CEO of A6 Media.
It was great. So high energy, had me engaged the entire time.
I think what's great about Kevin's message is that, no matter how naturally talented you are, no matter how great you can be, you can always keep striving for that next level. And even, if you become complacent, you might not even realize you've done it. But Kevin really helps you realize, that there's so much more that you can do. If you take a step back, really reevaluate what you're doing and what you're not doing, you can take it to the next level.
I loved his message about God's gift to you and your gift back. And he's just so down to earth and just a helpful, wonderful man.
Really, I think you can put him in front of anybody and you're going to be inspired, you're going to be motivated, you're going to want to go out there and you're going to want to start, reaching for that next level today.
Hey, thanks so much for joining in to the Leadership is Personal podcast, bringing you real-world solutions to real-world challenges in anywhere from 3 to 10-minute increments. Leadership is personal. Here's the better results.
Ken, how's it going?
Going great, Kev.
Awesome. Well, as you know, this month or for the next 4 or 5 weeks or so, we're going to be talking about the entrepreneur's journey. And we're going to talk about it from a very specific sort of framework. The perspective that we're going to consider is for those individuals that might have what we call a side hustle or who are contemplating or have this romantic notion running through their heads daily about leaving the corporate grind and going to work for themselves because they might think it's less work, which I think is a joke. But nonetheless, let's talk about it from the perspective of you being someone who's been an entrepreneur for a very long time, who's gone back inside and then come back out to be an entrepreneur. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be an entrepreneur. What's that mean to you? Let's start off there. What's it mean to be an entrepreneur?
Okay. What's it mean to be an entrepreneur? But first, let me say, Kevin, thank you for inviting me on the podcast. It is an honor because I've listened to some of your other guests, and it's a really great podcast. So I'm just honored to even be here. But to answer your question, what's an entrepreneur? What is my idea of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. What's it mean to you?
I mean, it's really just someone who's going to, for me, it's just taking an idea and creating something out of nothing. Meaning when you've thought about something or dreamt about something or saw a problem that you could solve, and it didn't stay in your mind or your imagination or as a dream. You actually put pen to paper, feet to pavement, and created something that people could touch or pay for. So that's an entrepreneur. So whether you hold a job or you're doing this full time, you're able to generate something, whether it's revenue, which we all want, whether it's support or advocacy, whether it's clients or voters. When you create something from nothing that someone else finds value in, then you can call yourself an entrepreneur.
So providing something that enables you to exchange value, whether that be monetarily or people are willing to pay for what it is you have to offer. Something latent in what you just said, too, that I heard was execution, which I think is a huge word for entrepreneur because, quite frankly, typically when you jump out there, you are doing the executing. You're executing, you're doing everything else. Hell, you're doing everything, right? You wear many, many hats. And so tell me, Kenny, I would imagine if you're wearing a bunch of different hats, that takes a certain mindset. Talk to me a little bit about the mindset of being an entrepreneur and maybe even in juxtaposition to the mindset of someone in the corporate structure still.
Well, I've been on both sides. And I think to be successful in either one, you can't have the same mindset, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you have to have the mindset that everything is, you've probably heard this, everything is figure outable. Everything that you run into as a hedge or a problem or difficulty, you'll be able to figure out whether it's you solving the problem or you find a resource or hire somebody to solve the problem. As an entrepreneur, you are in charge of the process from creating the idea to delivery of the product. Mm-hmm. In the corporate mindset, if you take that idea to the corporate world, you'll find yourself in trouble. Just only because you have all of these other stopgaps in which someone else has to assume responsibility in the particular space of the process. So trying to usher a product from beginning to end, 9 times out of 10 will cause you to step on the toes of those who have the responsibility of carrying the water at the next phase of the project. Gotcha. It can be problematic because even though in spirit and in effort, it seems like you're a team player and you're just moving for the greater good of the company, ultimately, the entrepreneur is going to solve the next phase of problems. And if that phase of problems is left up to your coworker or someone who might be in a senior position, it'll actually look like you're trying to overstep them or shine better than them or do their job, which becomes problematic. Hence the word, most people who are entrepreneurs could never go to work for somebody.
I totally understand it. So the interesting thing is, right, so as an entrepreneur, what I just heard you say is you have to be prepared to do it all, to solve it all. And I want to make certain that the listeners didn't miss what you just said, and that was that everything is figure outable, which I've not heard, which I think is rather profound. So in other words, as an entrepreneur, you're going to go over it, you're going to go under it, you're going to go through it, but one way or another, hook or crook, you're going to get it done. Back to the word execution. And so in order to do that, I think you got to have a certain mindset, and as an entrepreneur, I would often say that you probably see a vision that others don't. And so how do you deal with people doubting you or saying, yeah, no, Kenny, that's not going to work?
One, it takes some experience, and it really depends on the individual. If you're the type of person who, let's say, played sports all of your grade school and high school life, you're used to having success. You're used to being told you did great. You have some confidence that you can deliver. If you've never done those things, branching out to being an entrepreneur, you're going to run into some real insecurities because you're venturing into foreign territory. Most of the time, if you're just becoming an entrepreneur and you don't have entrepreneurs in your family or entrepreneurs in your circle, everybody's going to doubt you. They're going to doubt you because you'll be saying and trying to do things they never thought about. And you have to understand the reason people doubt you if they're close to you is because they're scared. They're scared for you, rather. Yeah. They don't want you to make a mistake. They don't want to see you fail. I thought you said you were going to put your phone on Do Not Disturb. They don't want to see you fail. They don't want to see you struggle. So their fear and apprehension is genuinely out of their caring for you.
That's right.
But you as an entrepreneur have to recognize that and figure out how you get around it. So I've struggled with that, as every entrepreneur has, because you look to the left of you and the right of you for support for your ideas or your next move. But I'm a visual person. And for me, when I think of an entrepreneur, I think of a single person. And I think of a single person who's moving forward in a direction that no one else is moving. So if you were to imagine a triangle, right, or an arrow, at the very tip of the arrow is the entrepreneur. And everyone behind him is literally behind him. So if you think about it, if you're at the very tip of the arrow, you can only look forward, because if you look left and if you look right, there'll be nobody next to you to co-sign your ideas, to tell you what you're saying is right, or even understand where you're going. Everybody's going to be behind you. And it's that momentum that you need to push you forward. So don't expect anyone to support you. Don't expect anyone to agree with you. Because if they did, everyone would be entrepreneurs. Everyone would have your idea. Everyone would have your motivation and your energy. They're always going to be behind you. And you need to constantly remember that every time you push forward. You need no validation. You need no support. Because an entrepreneur, you're venturing someplace no one else has went. So you can't expect anyone to understand where you are.
Gotcha. So then that would lead me to think that it's very, very important to have the appropriate network, right? And as we think about this notion of people going from corporate to being an entrepreneur, more often than not, the folks that are in corporate have a corporate set of mentors or a corporate network. How important is choosing your right network as you think about stepping out to be an entrepreneur?
It's probably one of the most important things. Because with the wrong network or the wrong set of friends, family, or supporters, you'll get the wrong advice. I was always told that if I want to be an entrepreneur or be successful in a particular area, I have to find somebody who's already successful in that area and model myself after them.
Gotcha.
Literally.
Gotcha.
So if someone's never ventured out on their own, they can give you in theory what they would anticipate. And there are some very intelligent people out there who would probably get it spot on. But the experience, the ability to rebound, the ability to understand, the ability to pivot is only going to come from someone who's experienced it.
Gotcha. So I think what I just heard you say is that in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to surround yourself with some entrepreneurs. Said another way, make certain that you don't fill your network or your board of directors with a bunch of corporate folks. The other thing I would venture to say is that, an entrepreneur versus a corporate person sort of sees the world a little differently, right? You talked about it earlier in that you're the tip of the arrow. So people aren't going to see what you see. People aren't going to have the perspective or understanding that you see. And quite frankly, as an entrepreneur, you don't have to take into consideration the people that your upline, if you will, your manager, your leaders, your chairpersons, your CEOs, getting their approval, if you will. So it's probably a little bit of an easier equation, right? Is there a customer? Is there someone that's willing to pay for this? And now how can I solve the problem in the marketplace and give them what it is that they're willing to pay for? So I imagine we need to be real cognizant of who we're surrounding ourselves with. I know that, Jim Rohn says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the greatest amount of time with. I personally say you're the average of your 5 closest friends. And so if you want to be an entrepreneur, you think it's a good idea to find a bunch of entrepreneurs to be friends with?
Well, if you can't be friends with them, because, our life, if you're making a transition from corporate America to an entrepreneurial lifestyle or traveling an entrepreneurial journey, 9 times out of 10, you won't have entrepreneurs as friends. So you don't necessarily have to have entrepreneurs as friends, but you do need to be able to tap into a regular network of those who are doing something similar or traveling that entrepreneur's journey. Join an organization. There are probably tons of organizations in every city. Networking is absolutely important with other entrepreneurs because not only do you need that advice, but you need that energy. You need that motivation. You need to be in the same space of those who are thinking like you. More importantly, not being around entrepreneurs will only extend the time you have to get into success. If you're an entrepreneur, as you surround yourself with entrepreneurs, you shorten the time it takes for you to go from planning to execution to really decent revenue. And that's what I've seen the most benefit in. Not necessarily all of the motivation, but being able to cut through a lot of the problems that only entrepreneurs experience to expedite your success.
So where did you find them? I mean, you said network is really important. Where do you network?
Yes. I'm a big believer that if you don't have anyone in your immediate network, and it would make sense if you're not surrounded by entrepreneurs, you don't come from a town or a city or in an environment, there are tons of entrepreneurs. You have to move outside of that location. And the best place to start is conferences. Conferences are probably the best place for you to find additional networks that may not necessarily be close to you, but you can engage in and enter in virtually to get what you need. That's the first place to start. Most of us overlook conferences because we think, well, we don't have anything to gain. Be very clear, conferences have absolutely nothing to do with the information that's being delivered. Conferences have to do with the networks that are being created outside of the breakout sessions, outside of the speeches, outside of the keynotes. That's where all of the value is received. And that's where the real networks are built.
Well, many of you know that I am a speaker, and it's so interesting. I often talk about, conferences that I've gone to, and there are a number of speaker conferences that are held, quite honestly, often, at the very least, quarterly. And more often than not, there's so much valuable information shared and gained that you get in the restaurant over lunch or grabbing coffee in the morning before you even go into the sessions, right? The people that have really done it, they're not necessarily looking to go to sessions. They're already at the top of their game. And so, I found that I've been able to really garner a hell of a lot of benefit by just grabbing coffee or grabbing lunch, and not necessarily in the plenary discussions or in the actual sessions, but, sort of that networking, if you will, outside of it. So, that's a nice little tidbit for those people that have this romantic notion of being an entrepreneur, but they're still in their corporate gig. I got a question for you because I keep referring to it as a romantic notion. Is it really a romantic notion? Is it romantic being an entrepreneur? What are your thoughts about that?
It is. It really, really is. Part of you being able to enjoy the romance is becoming really clear on what it is you're doing, where you're going, the product you're creating. Without that clarity, it creates nothing but stress and confusion. The romance comes when you have the freedom to imagine, create, plan, and execute. The romance comes when you have created a system for yourself to have a little bit more free time to enjoy your life. Most of the people who decide to go with entrepreneurship are really looking for the freedom to do the things they couldn't do when they're in corporate America. So if you lose that notion when you become an entrepreneur and say, I have to work 900 hours a week and don't keep that freedom as your pillar. So if the money gets you the freedom, it's still freedom as your goal, You'll get caught up in the stress. You'll get caught up in the mismanagement of time. You'll make the wrong decisions. And before you know it, it becomes more of a burden than the job you left. Then it's not romantic. It becomes romantic when you can get up in the morning, maybe when you wake up, and not necessarily because you have to, get the proper rest you need, and then spend time working on your day, have some goals that you need to achieve in order to push some kind of revenue, and then go into bed at maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning because you're passionate about your creating. That's when it becomes romantic. It becomes romantic when you can go on vacation and the most you have to do is pop open a laptop because everyone else is working a 9 to 5 and couldn't get the day off. So that's when the romance sets in. It becomes romantic when you can create something for a customer or solve a problem in a way that not only makes your customer feel good, but makes you feel good because you delivered something that they had a problem with and you created the solution. That's the real romance. But that comes from you putting some other things in place and achieving the mindset to stay focused on what your goal is. And that's the freedom to get the time to do what you want.
Now, you know what, Kenny, I'm cracking up here because you talked about you have the flexibility to sort of build what you want and to do what you want. But you talked about going to bed at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And then notice you also said when you go on vacation and all you really have to do is pop open a laptop. What I just heard you say was vacation means you might be doing a little bit of work on vacation. And so while it's romantic, and I think we all, when we're doing something that we love to do, the clock sort of stands still, or we just don't pay attention to the time. And so I think the romance happens in that you lose yourself in what it is that you're doing, right? I mean, give me a mic and open up the stage with an audience or a group to engage with, and we can be there all day talking because there's so much energy and transfer of value. But Lord knows it's hard work, right? And so I think the one thing that I try and help people understand is don't think you can become an entrepreneur so that you can work 5 hours a day or 4 hours a day, because that's probably not that accurate. Certainly not at the outset.
Well, and I think what you said is true in some respect, but I also think it's false in others. When you touch on the idea of saying you love to speak, you can get on the stage and speak for hours. Mm-hmm. But if, let's say, our families took a vacation to, I don't know, one of the islands in Greece, mm-hmm. and in the middle of a lunch conference, someone said, "My God, you sound amazing. We have an opening for someone to speak right now for $3,000 who dropped out. Would you do it?" But wait, you're on vacation. No, you do it. Not only because you got a little coin out
there,
but you love what you do.
You're not for $3,000 though.
Hey, listen, but my point is you love what you do. Right?
No doubt about it.
Right? And
absolutely.
What's great about loving what you do is that's the romance. The romance is in doing what you love. And the time, like you said, time gets away from you. So most of us as entrepreneurs get caught up in the day-to-day. I mean, we're human. We may not plan our time properly. We might have more tasks to execute than we have resources to do on our behalf. Mm-hmm. But getting to the place where you can focus on what you love, even if it is 4 hours a day or 4 hours a week, is when the romance really starts to blossom.
So what I heard you say is carve out some of that time to work on that thing that moves you, that thing that you really want to do. I often say folks should have a good idea of where it is they want to go professionally. And so if they're in the corporate grind, yet they want to be an entrepreneur, you know, what I think I heard you say was make sure whether it's four hours a day or 4 hours a week or what have you, carve out some of that time for you to do what it is you really love. If that's what you want to do as an entrepreneur.
The more time you carve out, the more clarity you get on the duties in your business that you love the most.
Okay. Now tell me something. So, you talked about carving out that time to get clarity around the duties that you love and that sort of thing. You know, one of the major things I think every entrepreneur has to do is a real assessment or an appraisal of themselves. And so, how important do you think that is? I mean, having a real clear understanding of who you are as an individual.
It depends on the individual, right? Okay. There's some people who operate strictly in a practitioner phase. Mm-hmm. They're about executing the steps and don't have any emotion into it. There are others that need to have that emotion because they're emotional people and need that motivation built into the steps that they're trying to execute. So depending on who you are, it's going to dictate how much clarity you need of yourself. Now, I would say, and this is just my opinion, to kind of get to that place where you're getting everything you want out of your entrepreneurial journey, You got to be really clear on who you are, because being clear on who you are is going to help you to understand better on where your strengths are and where you need to hire for, what you need to outsource. And that's going to help you to get the time you need to have that romance. I can't necessarily, it's absolutely necessary. I think maybe for myself, it's absolutely necessary. I mean, my shortcoming is I have a lot of talents in a lot of areas. So trying to figure out the one that's going to be the most beneficial to my business at this particular time or on a repetitive basis becomes difficult because I enjoy all of them. So I have to get really clear on what I do good and what I do great.
Gotcha.
And focus on what I do great and find resources without judgment to deliver what I can do good.
Without judgment.
Yeah. It's tough when you can do what you're hiring somebody to do. It's kind of the worst thing. It's like a chef eating at a restaurant, right?
Totally get it. Well, look, Kenny, I don't want to take too much of your time. I guess I'll finish off or cap this conversation off with one question, and that is, I normally ask for one, but I'm going to ask for two. Give me 2 pieces of information that you would tell that individual, that young lady or that young man who's thinking about taking that plunge. They're taking the leap to move from their corporate grind to being an entrepreneur. Give me 2 pieces of information that they absolutely should be ready for, should be cognizant of. What's your 2 main pieces of information? 1, practice discipline. Before you jump out of that corporate role, before you leave that job, practice discipline. I don't care what it is. Decide to do something in the morning, in the evening, and in the afternoon, and tell yourself you're going to consistently do it every day for 30 days. Practicing that discipline will put you in a pattern of success for yourself, meaning if I think something, I can execute it. You'll be able to take that energy with you when you jump out of the corporate world and take on the new roles of being an entrepreneur. Not being disciplined in your own life, I think, is the biggest handicap for any entrepreneur, because you're just faced with so many new challenges that you'll have to inject discipline in order to finish. The second would be to learn how to trust your intuition. The one thing that I've found in this journey is that no matter what the numbers say, no matter what my friends say, if I'm ever in a situation, in a deal, negotiations, my intuition has always been correct. When we chase money, when we chase goals, sometimes we lean in the direction that'll get us there faster without us really taking a gut check during the process. And those who have relied on their gut from the beginning of their entrepreneur journey, from what I've seen, have gotten to success 10 times faster than those that relied on logic. Logic works, but I do believe that intuition, when it comes to dealing with people, comes to dealing with your dreams, come to you understanding yourself and making a proper decision for you and your entrepreneurial journey, is always going to come from intuition. Kenny, I thank you. That is quite valuable information. Thanks for the time, and we look forward to having you back real soon.
If you join us here each and every week, you'll get a tidbit of information and insight that'll help you be the best version of yourself. Come back next week. Be sure to join us on Facebook within the Facebook group. Check us out on Twitter and on Instagram. Kevin D. Wright. Look us up. Check us out. Link to us online. Love to hear from you. Unlike some of the other podcasts, I want to hear directly from you, and I will answer your question. There's no question too tough, so together we can solve it. Stop back and tell a friend. Leadership is personal. Here's the better results.